Somebody was walking on private property. And the landowner called the police. This was like yesterday or the day before, I think yesterday. Called the British County Sheriff's Department. They came out and said that since that's a snowmobile trail, even though it's closed, it's public property. And that they had the right to be able to walk out
You, on the trail itself?
there. On the trail's closed.
Well, what does the agreement look like that the landowner signed?
Was I need to look at?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but. You know, like here, you can't snowmobile on the snowmobile trail if it's closed.
Right.
Even though, you know, so if it's closed to all traffic, I would think.
Yeah, I was just gonna send you an email, Julie, so I guess I won't. You got the link, huh?
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I just figured it out. Okay.
How do we sound this close to the monitor and without wearing masks today?
You sound really good because at regular meetings, you guys are too far away. And if your voice drops at the end of a sentence, that's what we miss. So yeah, you sound good.
Good, maybe people will hear us today.
There's not a lot of us here. So.
Yeah, that's true. There's not a lot of us here either, so.
No, someone else just pulled up. I don't know who it was.
I think that was.
Are you expecting somebody else on Zoom or is this it?
Not sure.
We don't know.
Possibly AJ. If he's not here in person.
Okay.
Susan can't make it, Dick can't make it.
Scott's sick, right? Scott's gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Lynn was gonna get on Zoom.
Oh, good. Hey, Jody.
Julie.
Come on up. I'm sorry. Sit wherever you're comfortable.
I like
So yeah, Scott, Lynn and AJ were the other two that said they were coming. But
I would think Scott, I just would be surprised if Scott would be late to the Zoom.
Yeah.
So nice outside, maybe he's out down the valley somewhere and he forgot about time.
he was here, so
Yeah, wishing somebody would come looking for
No service. Somebody will come looking at some point.
Sometimes I wonder. Get places. Yeah. Somebody.
Scott was here till 4 o'clock. So.
Up there on the fields. And all that.
My.
Yeah, big, but off he comes and helps me. He's got Verizon phone. Sure. Can't even send a text. Really? Won't even, you can't call him. I have to drive out in the field and meet him, find him. He's just out there for us. You don't have no, you can't text him like, hey, where you at? I did it before. I don't know. So, okay. Right. He's got to drive to the top of the hill, like if he's like not gonna do something like easy, he's gotta get his pickup, drive either to the Rocky Bar, it'll work there, or drive to the top of the hill in his Verizon. And he travels a lot to work, so Verizon actually works better for him. Yeah, and Cheeseburger works fine for him, but as soon as he comes off the ridge, nothing, zero, won't even text.
I can let
Well, we can wait. I want to give it 5 more minutes. That's fine.
Underneath it down the underneath.
I ain't no hurry.
No, right.
So, there's something out there.
That's right.
AJ. Did show up. We were leaving you for dead.
Not me, I knew he was coming. Oh.
Only forget, I'll have to get you your voucher for you.
He's not here.
Scott's gone, so you just gotta put up with us today.
Travis is running the meeting.
Yeah, they're gonna put up to me. It'll be quite the scene, I'm sure. All right.
You
Yeah,
guys want to jump?
Sure, just one. Thank you.
Mercifully,
It's long.
there's not much on.
Pretty long.
Nice to have a nice day once in a while, finally.
Oh,
Boy,
A lot of sunshine today.
oh, been a long time
Full
coming.
sun.
Yep.
Do we know that we're waiting for something else?
I don't, just Scott, but I guess I,
I think we can start it and if he comes on, he comes on.
all right, well, Dick is gone, so you have to put up with me. So everybody get ready for the misery. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. First topic of discussion is the ag lease contracts and possibly banning the neonicotinoid treatments. And we are looking to formulate a recommendation to be taken to the management board meeting in April. So
Obviously, we've had a lot of discussion about this already. Right? And I don't know, we've, Jackie found some stuff today too about the EPA. Environmental Protection Agency has some guidelines or restrictions on the use of Neoindex now, and is it that cap? So that cap already also has some restrictions on the use. I don't know if you want to bring those up or not. Do you guys feel we want to look at those? Or?
They're long reads, and we can also share the,
Is it? Did you find out if your seeds are treated? Yeah. Can you get them without? I can't. Do you have seeds without for this year? Not this year. Not for, but this wouldn't go into effect till the following year.
Right.
So as long as you could get them.
You can get them, that's not a problem.
Right.
I would say, but you have to order ahead of time.
That's why I keep farming it without them, right?
Yeah, it's true.
There's always a possibility of just hanging the whole works up. Larry will shut the combine off for one day and just walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta be interested in the guidelines, they're gonna come down no matter what, in a matter of time. The way I see it, the EPA, the DAC cap and all this. With no Neoindex, there's no doubt there's a yield loss, there's a revenue loss, this is bottom line. You know, and you take your bushels and your costs and production, you come up with a figure. And everybody has their own figures. So, and when you start talking revenue loss, it changes things, because you're out there to make bushels to make money. You know, not stupidly, but like any business. So that's, you know, that's really the bottom line. Like I said, if you know the rules before you start the game, you decide whether you're gonna play the game.
yeah.
So that's kind of nutshell sense. If you take 5% off the B yield and use today 16, 12, 14, it's quite a chunk. You get 10 to 15% off of the corn yield. These 4 or 5, whatever number you want to use on your yields, that's quite a chunk too. For revenue. Still have the same input, it's just that, and that's why the project is where it's at. It's the yield, you know, it's a, some places you don't need it, sometimes you do. Sometimes you need car insurance, sometimes you don't. If you need car insurance, you're glad you have it. If you hate things, that's the way I look at it, so like I say. Good side effects, we all know that, since we're discussing that. This had a fixed garage next to it. Very bad.
Yeah, I think the writing's on the wall that it's gonna come, the Neoindex are eventually gonna come to a complete end for the property here anyway. I think that starting in the next, not this year, but next year, I think maybe we do like a 2-year low dose neonic seed and see how your yields are.
Is that an option?
That's-
It's an option. You
An
can,
option.
there's low dose and then there's none. I mean, there's, for me as a producer, it made me nervous to pull it completely apart.
I personally don't think it's fair to you guys to all of a sudden say, oh, we're not doing neonics anymore.
Because you don't know what
You've been doing this for however long, like all of a sudden, that's it's over. I think we should at least give you, what, 2 years of low dose neonic seed.
Right.
And at least so you can at least figure out where to get it, how to get it, how much it costs, and what your yield, you'll have 2 years worth of yield to say, okay, you know,
Yeah, some data.
you gotta have something to go on, and it's better than pulling the rug out from you under your feet, like all of a sudden, that's it, it's gone, so that wouldn't really be fair, I don't think.
We don't know that Jody's gonna get the majority of the rent.
I might
next
not
year.
get it. Yeah, you don't know who.
You don't know who's gonna come.
Right, they're gonna, right, because it's going back up for.
I might not
for
get
lease.
Right, right.
But I think,
Public bid.
Right, never given a new renter an option to come into the low dose.
right,
We could just say none going forward. You
Well,
know,
that's your choice.
well, I'm just saying, like, and I like Jody, don't get me wrong, I don't
No,
know,
no,
I'm gonna speak against you. Sorry.
but yeah, I mean, if the person comes in and bids, whether I have an acre or 0 or the next person,
Right,
like I say, if there's gonna be no dose, well, then they need to know that,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
Scotland, no.
Oh, Scott, it's on.
Hey, Scott.
Scott,
So I put together just a quick snapshot. I haven't actually shown it to anybody, so just to to start the conversation, but we're already starting the conversation. So if you want to look at that, I can bring it up. And if you don't, just continue this conversation because it's on the same page.
I just don't think it's fair to just say, oh, we're banning it 100% instantly. I don't know, I mean, that's what I'm gonna vote for, is the 2-year thing, to at least to low dose neonics. And then, because I think after that, then,
Could I suggest it and then 3-year, because you get the, we do quantity rotation. More time, but because by the time the corn, then you get beans, you would have just those 2 years. There's quite a difference in years,
because there's,
you know,
There-
quite a difference.
there's this committee meeting and there's one more committee meeting, and at the end of that committee meeting is the management board meeting, and that's when this is all gonna go down.
Yep.
So
and the management board ultimately decides.
we'll present,
They take
we'll say
recommendation.
our recommendation is to do either 2 years or 3 years or no years. It's gonna get banned eventually, I think personally, and I don't wanna ban it right away, and then we'll go to the management board and we'll say, we recommend 2 years or 3 years, whatever, then they talk about it and they come up with the final say.
And I would like to say this into when it comes, let's just say hypothetically, you get some acres, you want to read the contract, because if the yields drop below your, more than what you expect would be, I'm not gonna keep on it.
Right.
It's just that simple. You know what I mean? So I guess you'd say you should walk on that. Because if that's the case, you don't know when it's really gonna be, 3 to 5 years or 4 years. And if you tied in, can't get out of that contract, who's gonna want to find the loss?
How many years is
If
it?
that comes out 6.
It's a 6-year lease.
And we like the 6 years because you can build your soil, you know what you have.
And organic, you can start to recover your
Yeah.
investment in 6 years. It takes 3 years to transition to organic.
So what you're saying is that you would like an option to,
It's in the normal contract now, we have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You
so-
got it like 30 days or something.
Yeah.
You know, what it reads right now is that either, like, you can get out of the contract, you need to let us know by, like, the first part of March, I don't remember the exact date, but it's first part of March, so that we have time to bid that out again to somebody else before the roads.
Right.
So,
As long as that clause is in there, and quite honestly, if all of a sudden the Neoindex hurts your yield quite a bit, after a couple of years of build up of pesticides or not pesticides, bugs.
I did see, and I would have to look back to see if I can find that, but I did read something about that there was some subsidies, like that they were for the transition time of transitioning over, that there were some places that were providing some subsidies or some incentives or things like that to kind of help.
To transition out of Neoindex?
I don't know what that is. I didn't read deep enough into it to know what it was.
Right.
But that there was some, that the leasers were providing a little bit of assistance or whatever. Whatever that looks like.
so like that, either incentive for going with no neonic or,
And Jody, you said you think that that should be 3 years, if that is a little bit more.
And I didn't realize that gets out there because that's half your contract, but it does give you more data as far as yield. If it's gonna influence and build up rootworms, things like that, we would know that. And of course, see, I deal with different type of farming, exactly. I do all no-till, a lot of residue. So it's a different ballgame, right or wrong, doesn't matter. So that's more of a challenge for me.
Yeah,
It's just as simple for our farm.
I would like to see while doing this, and maybe we don't, maybe it costs money and we don't have the money and, but I would like to see there's some type of a study while we're doing this. So that we not only get something good out of it by eventually not having units here on the landscape, but that we have some information to pass to the people that are gonna do it. Because it probably is gonna happen. So I don't know how that all works. I definitely am not a scientist, but do we take like a baseline, like soil sample or whatever the sample is, water samples or whatever right now? And then do we look at them again in however many years? And do we look at them maybe a 2-year cycle? Do we look at it again? Do we look at it again and see if what we're doing is making a difference? Or do we look at pesticide load right now? You know, like maybe you're doing a report like, nope, we didn't have anything problem this year, but then we do have a problem, or then we do have a problem. So that all that kind of gets, that information kind of gets dumped in a bucket, and that, you know, people searching for how to deal with neonics find our stuff, because we've done this and we've kind of worked, everybody working together to do that. I don't know what that looks like, but it feels like a good opportunity.
do you think in that, if there's a 3-year of the low dose, do you think during that 3 years that you would take some of those and put them in no neonic just to see the difference?
Once, I'll be honest with you, once I would probably try a few acres just to see, you know, because if it's gonna, it's a test, I don't want to say test spot so much, just a side by side at random places, because I can do it easily with planting for 6 none, 6 with, you know, it's pretty easy to do that. And that with yield monitors and everything, different fields, it's pretty easy to do, you know. I'm not saying I do 100 acres, of course, who knows what I get.
Right.
And then that's another thing too, is this worth, if I get, I don't know, if somebody gets 20 acres, is it worth that when the rest of their operation is going to be set up that, they might not be interested at all.
Well, right, you have to bid accordingly.
Right.
To adjust for yield loss and inconvenience of switching back and forth.
I feel that's might be where the incentives come in, where we're kind of asking you to do an experiment.
Right.
And that with your own money.
Not
fair.
Unless you're done.
Right?
Right.
So, I mean,
Let me think about that.
Yeah.
No, it sucks because it's almost impossible for you to make money now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's coming down the pipe and rather than,
And we need to be a leader here at the KVR in the watershed that we're in. You know, the river was flooded Saturday again, you know, all on its banks.
so. Are you organic then?
I'm Organic Valley.
Oh,
I represent Organic Valley.
Okay.
So I farm for Organic Valley. I run about, well, 300 acres total, but we have about 172 in the, we rent most of that from the Butcher Nation and 12 acres from KBR right now. And we do research type farming.
So what do you do Neoindex with your seed right now? So you're already no Neoindex.
We're no neonics, no pesticides, no herbicides, no Roundup, no commercial fertilizer, no anything.
Okay.
And we have a much wider ratio of crops growing up there, you know, clover and buckwheat, winter wheat, winter rye, alfalfa, corn, and sunflowers and just. But I'm not in the business to make money up there yet.
Right.
So what I'm doing is research to pass on to our members and to show that up here we can, you know, farm that organic. So I work a lot with tillage, so we're working on stir ratings and not tilling deep, we're using cover crops for break up hard pan and tillage. We're doing a lot of carbon sequestration measurements now. We're measuring sequestration carbon, the microbiology of the soil, and just all types of things like that to pass along to our membership to help them on their family farms across the nation. But I work with Jody all the time.
Well, I feel because he has to make money, and if
Right.
you don't have a good yield and you're not making money, like you say, it's kind of a tightrope we're walking. Once we ban it all together, if people don't make money on it, why release it?
Right. And I don't mean to subscribe, there's other farms, other land, you know what I mean, that you can farm. And there's better land, reserve ground is not premium.
Well, right, because it's all hillside,
Or under
gets flooded,
Right.
but,
it's not, you know, I'm not cutting.
Right.
Because I farm a big chunk of
right, but I just think eventually it's gonna get banned here, and
it.
instead of saying we're banning it now, it's like 2 or 3, what, you know, at least give you some.
And you should
chance to do
understand,
something.
what I do is profitable. It's just, I do it on a small scale, lots of different
Right,
activities. But if you went up there and wanted to farm organic, you could be profitable with farming organic, for sure.
This is Julie, and I'm not a farmer. Did you just say that you couldn't farm that land organically?
You could,
So my question is, down the line, would a farmer do better to be planting organic than to just plant without the neonicotide?
well, that depends on who's farming it, you know, so. In order to farm organically is a lot more labor intensive, it's a lot more tillage involved. You know, the wet fields, like around Warner, Weister Creek and things, I don't know if those fields could be farmed organically. Because I think when you start tilling them, and Jody, you know, if you start tilling those fields, they're gonna get wet and they're gonna stay wet. And you're gonna turn them into swamp more than they are. But, you know, I think that, you know, I'm here representing Organic Valley, our Organic Valley group. And, you know, I believe in organics, and I believe that farmers can be profitable up there farming organically and having a much wider variable of crop rotation. I also agree with what Jody's doing. I mean, what he's doing is working too. So I think that banning neonics is a great step in the right direction in cleaning up our watershed where we live and where I was born and raised and grew up and played and everything. So, you know, I'm not here to badmouth or misrepresent anybody or anything, and want to work with all the farmers. Takes all of us to get this done. It takes all of us.
Mhm.
I kind of assumed that maybe, like you said, the debt cap, and eventually I think the Neoindex will make, things will come along and they probably will be removing over a period of time. Because they're aware of what's going on. You know, how long will that be? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been buying since for years without Neoindex when I was young. We did all full tillage too.
Right,
It's full tillage years, like, yeah.
Cultivated.
Before, but then no till. It's a different. I feel it's definitely it's environmentally friendly. You don't get the erosion, you still have the residue, you have the green. You know, we can go on and on. It's just we're almost on opposite ends of farming.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Farm.
And Kenny farms a different way,
Yeah.
Earl farms a different way, and everybody has their own opinion on what works the best and what they believe and what they've been taught and what they're teaching their kids, and it all works and it all fails, so, you know, you can beat one up from one end to the other. And it just takes, it all comes down to management in what you can handle. So you're back to your question where you asked me if, you know, farmers would be better off to farm this organically. You know, I think some farmers would be great organic advocates out there and farm organically. You know, there's risk in it and it takes time and effort and you know, Jody, he combines for me, he sees the crops that I put in and they're as good as anybody's up and down the valley, you know, so it definitely can be done with the right management, the right effort and the right mindset.
So if we do the 3-year drawdown, would you be inclined then to renew your lease for the next time around? If we put the 3-year drawdown in there, then
But the renewer, it goes out for bid, so you have to bid back.
bid or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. See,
So you would bid.
Yeah, worms.
Well, right, because you never know if you'll get the bid.
Right.
But I mean, you would at least
Right, we could get.
bid what you vote, you whatever. I mean,
And
it's not-
then I will say this, it will determine, there's no doubt about it, on some, just because it's coming down, like, there's no time, we're not even angry. But it would depend on what fields we split or joke or star, you know, what fields you're actually in, because some of these, they're all different. You know, they're different soil
They have
textures,
different problems too.
different situations.
Different pesticides, different.
But
pests.
it's something that in the future, not this year, but in the future, I'm pretty sure I'll probably end up with some, just about someplace, whether it's here or somewhere. I mean, you gotta progress, you gotta keep learning. If you don't keep moving forward, you're gonna get left behind. You know, so you gotta learn.
So this is Julie. I have another question, coming from a non-farm person. So excuse me if it's a really ignorant question, but do I understand you to say that certain fields would be more adaptable to this than others? And, you know, would it be feasible in the drawdown to try the ones you think would be the best bet without Neoindex in that 3-year period, just to sort of an informal experiment, or is that not feasible?
If I could interrupt before the answer to that question, this is Scott Lind. I apologize for joining late, but I'm having difficulty hearing Jody. I can hear everybody else clearly, but for some reason, the mic isn't picking you up.
I'm sorry, because I talk louder, huh?
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not a public speaker. Right? Sorry. Well, there's definitely different fields that, I don't want to say this because it's kind of like, some will work better, no doubt, because better soil texture, better soil they have, better crops you have. Your marginal soils, you have more pressure, you have more weeds. This is part of a management decision that you have to make. That is one benefit of being the 6-year, you know how these fields operate over a period of time. You know, if you just got 1 or 2 years, boom, might have a wet year, might have a dry year, you don't really know, but you have the history on yields, but some would definitely work better, I would think, but there again, I haven't planted non-Neoindex for years on a no-till situation. So I would definitely do a lot of research before I do very much of it. You know, just, that's just business, that's just what you do.
I think when you're, Julie, you might be a little confused between the land that would be best for organic farming versus non-organic. Is that right or not?
Oh, thank you for clarifying that. I was just thinking about no, yeah, no, I wasn't thinking organic versus not, just,
Okay,
sorry.
So how would soil texture or wet versus dry or anything else about the field itself affect the choice about neonicotinoids or not?
Well, I guess there again, you're going to some type of history, because when you get certain weed pressure or insecticide pressure in no-till, they lay the eggs, they lay larvae, and you're gonna have more of them the following year. You know, this is kind of the way it goes. I don't really know whether wet would be better or dry would be better. Like I said, I just don't know what that answer would be. That's why I say when you go in and it's all at once, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, what are you doing? You stick this money out here, you take a 15% yield cut. That's a lot of money. Let's just be honest. That's profit and loss. I mean, nobody wants that. So I definitely think slower is better.
Yeah, so like in the 3 years, then at least you could say, well, I did this last year and it really sucked.
Yeah.
So I better not do that again.
Right.
But I did it over here and it worked really, really good. So then I'll do more of it there.
And then next year,
Well-
when that rotation comes up, you're gonna know what you have to deal with or what you gotta deal with. And I don't know I'm not really sure what products or methods combat stuff. This is all new, kind of, you know, we just don't know. We're not in uncharted territory for.
I have another question if I could. So, you know, I'm new to this whole topic in the last 2 months, so I'm naive about a lot of things about it so far. But you know, what I think I've learned so far anyway, I believe the DNR on their crops, rental property like at Wildcat Mountain does not allow neonics. I don't know how long that's been going on, or if you have any knowledge of the folks that are renting that land, or if you rent any land on DNR property. I assume not.
No.
Okay. And the other thing, I guess that, you know, I guess for me to be inclined to go to a 3-year period as a board member at KVR, I feel like I don't have any good knowledge about what's actually being planted on the KVR land. So in other words, if we're using neonics, how much of it are we using? What type are we using? Because apparently there are several types. So if I was gonna vote in favor of a longer cycle, then I think I would want more information about what's actually being put into the ground here.
So Scott, in a way, you want that in a way that you want them, farmers to tell what seed they're using or what load, and I'm not sure what, is it a unit, is it a CC, I don't know what it is, do you know what I mean? So,
Right.
like,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know what the right measure is or what the right way of conveying that is, but right now I think we're blind to what that is. So if I was going to agree, it's obviously a board decision, but if I were going to vote on it as a board member, then I feel like if I'm gonna agree that we're gonna do a transition time, then I want to have some idea of what we're actually agreeing to.
Kind of, so there's a plan, not just a delay, a plan.
Yeah, or at least knowledge, at least information, right? Yeah.
you know, that entomologist talked about that different loads or different amounts of the neonics, and you know, I think he did put a number to it, like here's the normal or the high, and this is the reduced amount. And it was a little bit less than half, I think. But I don't know those numbers. But from what I gathered on there, it's more than half. Or, you know, you cut that amount in half at least.
In half.
It's not more.
Well, and the other part that, again, I'm just learning about this, but the other part that makes me wonder, I understand that there's a breakdown of the neonics depending on where they're located, exposed to sun, not exposed to sun, in clear water and muddy water, in the soil, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think I understand that there are different half-lives for different neonics. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but if there is a different half-life, and if there's a neonic that stays in clear water for 7 days and a neonic that stays in clear water for a year, that's relevant information to me as a board member. But right now I don't have any idea what's going into the land.
Read on some stuff today, and there's one of those neonic types that are more commonly used in corn than any other application. So we can maybe hone it down to at least one of them that we can do a little research on and find out. I don't remember what that one was called. It was in one of those that you sent out today.
Yeah, those are.
And this is Julie again. I guess I would be wondering too, if you do a transition, what are the parameters of that? Do you say a certain amount of your crops will not have neonics and some will, or certain areas, or, this year it's gonna, you're gonna do them all the same? And I don't know what that should be, but would there be some sort of definition of how that would proceed, how your experiment or your transition would work?
That's a good question.
Yeah. If you can see the screen sharing, I'm making those notes so that change what you want or we'll add things in so that we kind of have a little roadmap here, because we do have to make a decision by next meeting.
Well, the other thing is how you're gonna police it. So, I've never looked at a seed tag in conventional corn or beans, but what I understand, it's very hard to tell by a bag tag that it has neonics in it or not. So I would suggest you're gonna have to get an affidavit from the seed supplier stating it doesn't have it, or it's got 50% lower, whatever we decide. And then the landlord's gonna have to prove that he purchased that seed for this ground. Like,
His seed tag has,
doesn't have
what
it
is
on there?
treated, the chemical name of it. I believe it, don't quote me on it, I don't see big. I'll check on it.
But there's gonna be have to some type of policing, it's gonna be so much on the farmer. And then
Right, if you want to eliminate it in 3 years, or you want to get down to at least 50% in 3 years, you know, 50% first year, have, things like that are, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what the definition would be.
I guess the way I saw it would be that you would use that lower dose for the first 3 years. And
Or
then
you
after
can.
that,
You can use that lower dose for the first 3 years,
Or use none.
or use none if you decide to.
Right.
But that first 3 years is the,
Your grace
your
period.
grace
yeah, the
period.
kind of grace
It's about
period.
50%.
And you haven't determined what the incentive would be for 100% no neonic seed.
If you even want that in there, I just threw it out there. It definitely doesn't have to happen. It's what other places have done.
Well, right, so I'm just wondering what that would look like. Is it?
I don't know if it's a percentage, if it's, and please do not take this and put on any paper. If it's-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, Jackie, speak it up.
We're recording this, Jackie.
Is it $2 off an acre? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't have any idea. Is it
I was
5%
wondering.
off? Is it $2 off an acre? I don't even know what the numbers are, but, you know,
Yeah, I mean, to me, the decision on that would have to be, partly based strictly on what the board feels the value is of going to no neonics. That's the first factor.
Mhm.
What are we willing to sacrifice if we want to go straight to no neonics? And the second piece of that would be, can we find any data? Because obviously, we're talking about doing an experiment here, but I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, there's got to be some data out there already on impact on yields.
Mhm.
And so that seems that incentive could be tied to that kind of data as well. But I don't think we know what those answers are today.
Jody, did you mention what you thought that was earlier when Scott wasn't on the call yet?
I've heard that you will lose approximately about 5% of your bean yield. And there again, you put whatever number your yields are, dollar per bean. So, if you take a 5% of 40 bushel and it's $12, there's a number for it, whether that's your actual numbers, the grower number, that's what it is. And I have heard up to 15, sometimes 20 on corn. I think 20 is probably stretching it, but 15, that's a pretty good sized number on corn because your ruts are the biggest thing in the tap rots. If they start gnawing them off.
How much money would that be per acre?
Well, if you take 150 bushel corn at 15% would be, do math, more to the farm.
I have a calculator.
I think that Russell Groves did speak a little bit to that. I think there's some data on that. The entomologist that we had on here, I think there is some data, and
It's
I
22 bushel.
22 bushels.
yeah.
Let's just take that times 450.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more than that now, but let's just say, that's $101 loss.
Per acre, $100 an acre loss.
How much is rent? See?
How much is rent?
Well, what is your average?
The average was close to 100, yeah.
So 15, but if you got 15% off of that, offset the yield loss, 15% yield, 15%.
Now, if that's a high number or a low number, that's just what you hear.
I'm just saying, like, how do you incentivize the loss?
Yeah.
I mean, like, we can't give you $100 off an acre,
No,
but you know, I mean, that'd be like a lot more of a percentage.
no, but that's how the numbers start adding up,
Right.
really quick. When you're
200 acres is $20,000.
real quick. Still have to pay the rent, because KDR likes.
And we make a good, I mean, I don't know how much of our yearly revenue is off of ag leases, but probably a lot.
That was around $74,000 a year. Yeah, that's a big part.
So.
But that was 15% less. It wouldn't make a lot of difference. $75,000 a lot of money, but it's not really paying the bills. I mean, it's helping for sure, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like the place would close the lights.
No, but the big problem we have now is the 100-year flood comes 3 times a year, which really.
But it also spoils the field.
I know. It's just, yeah.
No, I mean, 75,000 is not anything to sneeze at, That helps with all of our projects that, it all goes back into the land management here and,
Well, and the other piece of it is if we weren't having you guys till that land and plant that land, that's land that we have to maintain in some other way to keep it from becoming something other than just brush. Right? Even if we seed a permanent crop of grass in there, we're still going to have maintenance on it of some sort.
Well, it could become brush. We have 9,000 more acres of brush.
Well, some of us are working hard to make sure it isn't just brush.
yes, you'd have to put a lot more time and money into it. Those acres would cost us money rather than making money.
Right.
I made a remark one time that maybe we should look at 3, 4 little plots of flower bee habitats to encourage it, to help it.
Well, I think,
I don't want to buy a bee, I don't like to get stung, but you know what I'm saying, it's one of those fields where, you know, just a thought, at one time.
So if I could ask another question, one of the things that intrigued me when you guys were talking earlier about, wet fields versus dry fields or poor soil conditions and so forth. Jason and Jackie, you may know this because you've been around the reserve all these years and dealt with ag leases, but I certainly don't, and I'm assuming Julie doesn't. Do we have any kind of understanding as a reserve about which fields are really marginal fields, and should we even be renting those fields or take them out of production?
We have done soil tests out here. So prior to this last 6-year lease, we did soil testing to find out, where they're at. And I believe 6 years before that as well. So we have every 6 years, we have some soil test data. And we were planning on doing it. It'll probably be done this fall again. So we'll have an idea what the soil testing is.
And we've actively removed, I don't know how many acres out of production already.
Yeah, down by Bridge 9, they took that whole field off.
There's fields down by the flash that came out. Where else?
Right along P by Wolf Valley.
Were those all flood damaged? Was that the
Yeah, most.
issue?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I will say this, when I started renting, I don't know how many years ago, I rented Upper Star Valley. It was the lowest pH field I ever seen. And that was when it went from year to year to year with different rents.
right,
And yeah, I put lime in, we put lime in, but that was the lowest pH field I've ever seen. And even the soil guy said, what'd you pay for this? So it's,
that's
Yeah.
the same thing was at the organic fields up there, the lowest, they were the lowest in micronutrients and minerals and pH and everything was the lowest that our soil scientists at organic guy ever seen. The lowest.
Yeah, there's no secret that
Yeah.
6 years has improved
Yeah.
the
Soil quality.
the soil quality
in-house.
here and.
Yep.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
But Scott, I think maybe more than highly erodible fields or the fields that are in the flood zone 3 times a year, or those fields that are underwater a lot, are those fields worth, I mean, Jody, you rent them,
I rent Lower Eastern Creek.
right? And it's a big area.
It's a big
It's
area.
nice to go in there and get a lot done.
There's wet spots. You will probably rent I'm just gonna pick the numbers here, you might rent a 40-acre field and you're only gonna harvest maybe 32. Because there's spots, if you get the rain, that will flood out. But when you take the whole average, like that one down Whisker, you get pretty good yield on a tile. So it's good productive. If you want to take out that wet spot, well, then you're kind of like farming around circles. It's just not economical there either. I farm all those ways too quick ones right now. And other than maybe one, they're wet, but no, last year they did good. It was a dry year. But 100-year flood, what is a wetland valley? I own land in the valley. I have water stand in my own fields. You have that much rain. You just have that much rain. Right. So there again, I'll go back to the 3-year or whatever, at least you have a history, different weather patterns.
Just curious on those down there, and only, this is kind of a little bit off topic of this, but you farm those all the way through the habitat rehab down there, all the way through that. Have you seen, and I know we haven't had normal years and everything, nothing is normal.
That's
But-
the norm.
Huh. It's a new normal.
It's the new normal.
But have you seen a difference since that work was done
Yes,
for the positive?
for the positive, because it doesn't back the water up so much with all the trees in there.
Sure.
You still have to go down there and move some pretty good sized trees out of the field. but you have to do that anyway. I know the one by, Kickapoo Valley Ranch, that down in that 3-corner field there, that kind of gets stuff, but that's 2 acres, 3, you know. Then as you go on down in that big field, there's, again, like I said, maybe 4 acres or so that gets, probably gets worse, but it's not as bad as it was.
Yeah,
But when you get 15 inches of rain coming down straight road, straight hill, it's what do you expect?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's common good cash.
yeah,
It's a big watershed.
big
It's
watershed.
collecting a big watershed, many thousands of acres.
Big time.
Is there anything else that are we on this page, or do we want to go a different direction with this? It's definitely not a decision, but I do feel like we have to lean towards something. We have to have a decision by next meeting. Or what more information do we need to make a decision? How about that?
You said by next meeting, right? Not next week?
Next meeting, yes, next
Next meeting, yeah.
which is
Yep.
April. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing for me is to figure out how does KVR get a better understanding of the Neoindex that would be used during this drawdown? I mean, Jody, is that something you can share with us? Is your seed supplier could share with us, or how do we find that out?
You know, you just have to grow and find out. You
Just
know,
have to what? I'm sorry.
You'd have to grow some corn and find out, you know.
Well, I mean, what's going to be put on the seed? What Neoindex would be put on the seed that would go in the ground? That's what I mean.
First off, for me, if I end up with any corn ground or bean ground, then that's to define whether it's bean corns or both, what you want to treat it with. And then when I pre-order my seed, I would have to say, I can't have any more than, well, let's say half level. Can you get that for me, and what is it gonna be treated with? And then if that supplier can't, well, then I'll have to go someplace else. But it's available, I'm quite sure, out there at half rate, maybe no rate or whatever. But at that point in time, if there's a rule, you know, right, like I said, if that's a rule, then I have to go out and find that, and that's what the seed will come back. It may be easy, it may not be, I guess, like I said, but I'm pretty sure somebody, someplace will have enough. Granted, I'm not saying I want to plant just even down the road hybrid, I guarantee you that. Because I'm pretty sold on certain hybrids, where they go to early rate, you know, you can go on and on down the list. So that has to work in my program, just like yours too.
So maybe, at one time, did you have that? We had a list of all the seed companies and what neonic chemicals they use. Wasn't that on the list? I've seen something like that somewhere where they were listed out. So that might be something we can lean on Russell, the entomologist, a little bit with, like, give us a list of maybe the most common names, or I don't know, products that are used, and that they're listed out on which ones we won't allow, or none. You know what I mean? I have no idea what they are. I wouldn't even know where to start looking at that.
That's why I wondered if Jody, if your seed suppliers, I don't know where you buy seed, but if your seed suppliers can provide us that information.
I could ask and find out, I guess. It depends on, yeah, I mean, ask them. You know, I guess
If you could, I mean, that'd be helpful for us, because like Julie said multiple times, we're not farmers, so I don't understand your business. But we know where to find that information, but.
Yeah, you could ask them, like, what we're gonna do about the in-laws, what's an alternative to doing it, right? Maybe there's an alternative.
There could be.
And we just haven't looked at that yet, right, that's safer, that will be approved. And
Yeah, I mean, just questions. that
because
you
obviously,
can ask.
if the EPA and everybody's getting involved, the seed
That's-
suppliers are gonna have to be doing something about it.
And they change.
Have to make it available,
Right? They may change what they're treating with over time. For example, this year I bought a product that's, when you plant with an air planter, you have a lot of dusting off and you see corn which blows dust off. That Neoindex around bees or is whatever is, that's the highest rate right there. I bought a product this year that I'm treating all my seed corn, everybody's, or everybody that I plant, that will eliminate that by 93%. So that just one product will eliminate from the dusting off, which is a high amount of dusting off or contamination. You know, so there's products out there already trying to deal with this. Soybeans, I think most of those are gone in 25 days, what you treat the beans with. Small amount always stays out there, you know, but what long is that? The corn is, the dusting off is the biggest thing. Other than that,
So looking at this, Scott, were you thinking that some neonics were worse than others? Is that what you were thinking?
Well, that's, I've only seen, 2 lengthy presentations on this, and that's one of the takeaways I had, but, I've got a lot of reading to do yet. And, I gathered some of it is where the neonics end up as to how fast they degrade. But I also understood, and maybe incorrectly, that different neonics had vastly different half-lives. And obviously, the longer they're in the environment, the more they accumulate, the more damage they're going to do. So
you think on that 3-year that there's some that we should ban altogether? I'm not putting words in your mouth, or that there's.
I'll say maybe, right? I don't know enough to answer that question yet. I just don't know enough. I just don't know. I need to educate myself a little more, but my first reaction was, well, first thing I want to know is what exactly is being used. And if it's got a 7-day half-life in soil, I'm honestly not that concerned about it personally, for me personally. If it's got a 10-year half-life in muddy water, I've got a lot of concern about it. And that's what I'm trying to get to, I guess, is a clear understanding of if there are 15 kinds of neonics that could be put on corn or put on beans, which of those are we going to have here, and what is the longevity of those? So how long is the decision we're going to make this year going to be impacting the reserve? Is it impacting it for the next week or impacting it for the next 10 years?
right.
So.
Neonics are used in a lot of different areas too. It's not just corn and beans.
Mhm.
I mean, they're used in the greenhouse, they're used in a lot of different areas. And you know that
Could you say that again, please? I didn't hear it.
neonics are used in different areas also, not just corn and soybeans. It's flowers, gardening, things like that. So it's not, we're not
Thank
just all ones that use it.
Potatoes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know that if you have sandier soil and you irrigate, but we don't know that, you run a higher risk of them running off. We don't have a whole lot of sand here, we don't irrigate, but not to downplay, it's what it is.
They do react differently in different places,
Yep.
definitely.
I think for me, the reason why this becomes such a crucial decision is because of the longevity of the lease, right? So if we're like we did, we voted to do them for a 1-year extension to get some time to understand the issue better. But once we commit to that, then regardless what we learn, we've got an issue, right? So that's why, it falls on me to get better educated about it very quickly. But I feel like I'm lacking that information about the actual product itself. That's what I feel like I'm really missing right now. But
So Scott, you need more information on specific products. So far we've given all of the effects of all of this, but you want to know the specifics of each thing. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, I think I'll go back and watch the presentations again and see if I misunderstood some of what was presented, and maybe it's some questions we can direct to those guys as well. But if Jody has the ability to get, any information, Jody, you can get from your suppliers about the product they're actually applying.
Sure.
that'd be helpful, because that might short circuit the whole discussion, right? That could make it a faster answer that way.
If I can pronounce them.
I'm sure
No
Oh,
kidding.
so we almost need to hire a scientist to come here and present about it.
Well, we kind of have that, sort of.
Yeah.
I think Russell would come again and would talk to us again and would do some of this work for us where, you know, if we're interested. He seemed receptive to that before. So I think if we gave him a list, hopefully he could get, you know, I don't know.
Get it to now and give them a month to work
Yeah.
on it.
And Jody, this is another non-farmer question, but do you buy the same kind of seed every year from the same guy, or do you switch around what you're using?
Nobody's a for sure sale. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
Yield results, good quality seed. There, of course, seed varieties change every year. Sometimes the old diehards are good for several years and I'll stick with them. But usually I'll try something new or some up and coming every year to stay with progression. But the last couple of years I've been buying from the same supplier. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna do it every year, you know. But most generally, the seed that are treated are all treated with the same type of, yeah, sort of Neoindex.
thank you for explaining that.
All right, so I guess where do we go from here then? Just try and get more information for the meeting in a month, and because then we gotta come up with a decision from the board for sure. So,
One of my questions would be is how do you want this information? How do you want to access this information? Do you want it emailed to you? Do you want it put on the website to go find and read at your leisure? How do you want that information?
The email for me works best if we can do it that way, but
well, then you would know everybody would get it then, send an email.
right.
And when you say the information, do you mean what specific kind seeds are?
The answers to
Or,
these questions that we have up here.
okay, and who's going to do that?
Well, I assume staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jody.
And
And Jody.
Something just to get her hand. No, I'm losing revenue, I'm losing revenue.
And
now you're gonna
work for it.
Why am I here?
Incentives, Jody.
He might not even get any land back.
Yeah, I know, I might not get an acre. It's a very low fee. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Is there anything else we should add to this list?
Yeah, there you go.
That's all I can think of.
Yeah, and we can also add to the list, I suppose, as we work through the list, we might come up with more questions.
Yeah. And Jackie, when you said use half load of seed, you mean use a half load on the seed? Is that supposed to be on instead of, or is it supposed to be of in the top line there?
I suppose it could be on, I don't remember, that's what he called it, was half load.
Oh, okay.
Half rate.
Half rate.
Half rate. Okay,
Hypothetically, if it's 120 grams, it would be 600, or 1200 would be 600.
yeah,
And I don't know if those numbers are right,
yeah,
but we have rate.
okay,
Okay.
Half rate loan
yeah,
on seed,
on seed,
yeah. Cause you use 100% load on half the seed.
You're sneaky.
15,000, or 15,000. Just cut the rate back, I use 100%.
Okay.
Well, we can keep going on this. I mean, it's good to have a list and a direction to go after some of these things and for sure share all of this with whoever wants to read it and see it.
Yep.
Okay,
Is there anything else then, or is that's it for this egg lease? Yeah, nicotinoid thing for now. Anybody have anything else? Going once, going twice.
well,
Sold, okay. All right,
Thank you.
thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Take care and good luck in your scientific endeavors. You gotta wear a white uniform when you come back next week.
Lab coat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks
care.
much.
All right, other updates. So now, I guess we'll start with law enforcement update.
I just want to let you know that we did get our lettering on our truck. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not, but you know, before it was just a silver truck with the lights on. Now it says Kickapoo Valley Reserve on the sides, got our logo, also has the police patch on the rear panel of the box. So
Yeah, looks nice.
identifiable to people who are not from around here, I guess. So that's done. We also got the camera installed in the truck, so that does have a squad camera in it. We also at the same time got 2 body worn cameras. So right now we're still waiting on some parts that didn't work correctly, so it is operational, but it's not working quite the way it should. And also developing policy for the use of that will be done before we actually put them into use, so. I don't know if you guys wanna take a look at that policy before. I'm actually working on probably 110 different policies for the police right now. So,
Wow.
sure you guys want to do all of those.
Wow.
The camera is one of them. So. I don't know how you feel about if you wanna look those over and okay them or not.
I personally would just take your word for it.
Yeah, so we probably talked about this before, but I contracted with a place called Lexipol. So they do the kind of model policies for the police department of our size. And then I kind of modify it to make it work for us. So some of that work is already done for me and I just have to tailor it to the reserve. But all that stuff has been vetted by their attorneys, and any changes that come about in case law or whatever, I'll automatically get updates to the policies to make sure that they're in line with the new laws. So it's a good program, but it is quite tedious to go through all of those policies and try and get them right for here. So I've been working on that for a month or more, taking time, at least one day a week to work on it,
So I hate to even ask this question, Jason, but do those policies have to be reviewed by DOA lawyers?
I could ask them if they want to review them. I've contacted DOA attorneys before to get their help in doing them, and they're like, well, you go ahead and do it and I'll look it over with stuff. So
Okay.
I can just send them the whole policy manual and they can look it over and say yes or no, I guess. So it's not.
I mean, I'm not saying you should do that. I just didn't know if that was something we had to do or not, and whether it's helpful or just a time suck for everybody, But
It probably wouldn't hurt to get there, okay, but it's also gonna be changing regularly. you know?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that we're gonna get through okay on every change that comes down. Cause there can be a couple a week, you know? So
Mhm.
it might be good for the first time, but I'm not sure that that's feasible every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it might not hurt to let them look at it and weigh in the first time, and who knows what they'll say or what they'll find, but if anything.
At least so they know that it exists.
Right. Yeah.
I think our attorney is leaving the state, so we'll have a different one than I normally work with, so that, I really like the one we have. so-
Yeah, just say it's gonna suck probably.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, there's that. Also, you know, we're down to about 2 part-time officers now. So I'm gonna try and get some more hired on for this summer. Hopefully we can get a few more. We had one of the guys took a job in Iowa. Other one just needed more time for family, didn't have time for the part-time job anymore, so. So we're down to 2 part-timers. I'm hoping to bump that number up.
So where do you post those positions, or what's like the timeline for that?
We can post them in the local papers, or there's also, we can post it on WileyNet, which is a law enforcement website, basically, and there's a job posting portion to that website, which goes statewide, nationwide, so we'll get a whole bunch if we put it on there, maybe not all that we want, but get a bunch. So it might not hurt, you never know who you get, so.
I think Julie was hinting she wanted to apply. That's why she was asking.
No, that wasn't it.
No?
But
Okay.
when,
Right.
I was really curious about the timeline. When do you put it out there, or when do you want them hired?
It could be out there for, I guess, however long we want to put it out there, if it's 2 weeks or a month, you know? And then we could literally go through the applications and interview and hire shortly after, so. There's more to it than that, like, you know, physical exam and, you know, drug testing and those sort of things, but. It would probably be a 2 months by the time they were ready to go. Maybe on their own, depending on who they are.
Anything else?
No, I think that's about it for enforcement.
All right, so now it's the new volunteer program and on the reservation system.
And that is me. So nothing specifically new to report on the volunteer program, except for we are having a volunteer training. We're kind of introducing it for the first time tomorrow at noon, from noon to 1 on Zoom. And then again, the same exact thing again on Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30. Erica and I will be on Zoom, and anybody that shows up, we're just gonna kind of walk through the whole program, just kind of show it to people, help people learn how to sign up for it. We're gonna go over privacy policies, and then it'll be just open forum, answer any questions that people have. And then we'll also post those little Zoom meetings that we're gonna have with the questions, unredacted on our website, so that if you don't have time to jump on one of those meetings, you can just go on our website and watch those little Zoom meetings that we're making tomorrow and Thursday. So yeah, I guess we could consider it the rollout of it, because we're going to allow people to actually start signing up on the volunteer portal. So do a little training, and it is ever changing, and it's going to continue to evolve and grow, and we'll add more trainings as they come available, and and things like that. But I think we're ready to implement it, so. And then any questions on the volunteer management? Oh, to add to that volunteer management, right now, it's just the KVR that's doing that. We aren't including any of the Friends activities or anything like that, not because we don't want them, just because they have some more questions before we include them in on it. So we have some questions to answer to them, some privacy policy questions, which may be answered when we go through it in the trainings. And then by all means, and 100%, we want the Friends group on board, and we'll share this. And it'll be the volunteer management for both groups kind of combined. Any
I'm
questions?
excited to see how it rolls out.
Yeah,
Looking
it's
forward to it. So.
pretty fun. Kind of like a game. Go ahead, Julie.
I was just gonna say, you could just sort of see how it works and use Scott's spreadsheet from the volunteers from the classroom,
Compared to that spreadsheet, you mean?
or just feed that into there, those names and those
Oh.
hours, and just see how that works.
Yeah, we can import those kinds of things. That was one of the things we talked about actually in one of the trainings that we took, is that we were opting to not import any previous information because we want people to vet the system and the privacy policies themselves, not force them into it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So while we want to know all that information, we also we're going to start from square one so that we're fair to everyone. And if we have to keep kind of a separate little file of people that don't, or an anonymous volunteer, we will. So. So that's that. The registration system, I think that's on there. Is that-
Reservation system.
Reservation,
Yep.
okay. So that has not come to a screeching halt, but it's come to a screeching slow. Because right now the RMS is a cloud-based system, and in order for us to use that RMS cloud-based system, it has to be approved by DET at the state, which is the Department of Enterprise Technologies. And so they have to vet all of those things. The nice thing about the volunteer management, it's already been vetted. It has been approved by the DET, so that we're sailing on that one. But so far, it seems to be moving along, actually. They've put a deadline, their own deadline on it of the 16th, so that's just next week. And we have all of our paperwork in. RMS has all of their, which is the registration system. They have all their paperwork in. So unless they find some hiccup with the system, which I don't think that they will, it feels like we might be on our way. So.
Well, nothing ever goes wrong when the state gets involved.
Right now, so it's kind of sitting and spinning in queue. And we'll wait to see. So if for some reason that doesn't happen, Erica has worked with also with DOA to get the payment side of that set up. So that's already working and going to be in place. And they actually have kind of what they created during COVID, like a hotel management for state employees during COVID that would work for us. It certainly wouldn't do everything that we needed to do, but we could implement that quickly, and it's already approved and everything's done with that. So if for some reason this cloud-based system falls apart, we do have options. They're not exactly what we want, but it's an option, and it's not an expensive option, and it's a short turnaround time because it's already being used. So there's some options.
At one of the board meetings, we talked about whether we needed to have a terminal. You know, I picture this like an ATM machine, basically without something that would take any cash, just a terminal to type stuff into. I think we talked about having that outdoors and accessible. Is that still something we're talking about doing or not?
I think that is a step, you know, as funds allow, I think that definitely is a step that we could get to. And we, even with staff, we talked a little bit more about that, where, you know, maybe that is actually moved down here to the visitor center, where you come, we change the doors so that we lock the inside doors instead of the outside doors, so you can get into that vestibule and it's there instead of a garage or something, a little bit more climate controlled and, you know.
Yeah. Be cheaper, wouldn't have to be weatherproof. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So that is definitely, that's not off the table, but it definitely is, depends on funds. Those aren't cheap. We did price them, you know, they can be anywhere from, you know, $2,500 to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on what it is. So, you know, that's not a tomorrow thing, and it doesn't have to happen to make the reservation system happen. So.
Yep. So that's phase 2 or phase 3 or something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions on those?
I guess that's all that's on the list. Any other issues from anybody?
I just have one, and it's gonna be quick, and I don't wanna keep bringing this up. But I do think that eventually that the board is gonna have to look again at e-bikes. I'm not advocating for them, but they're becoming way more readily available. They're at Walmart for less than $500. So people are going to be able to get them. And I think they're going to be ending up out here more and more and more. So I'm not advocating for them. I'm just saying that no policy, no e-bike policy is going to, we need to have something really set in place, because it's going to have to start getting enforced. Like,
We don't have an e-bike policy. I thought we had didn't we have a certain amount an hour or nothing?
No, they're not allowed, period.
Oh, they're not allowed, period. That's what it is. Okay.
Well, do we put that on the next meeting list, or what do you?
There's some members that are sick of talking about it,
Oh,
like Dick, I know, but.
and I'm not saying that we have to keep revisiting, and I'm totally okay with the no e-bike policy, but I guess what I'm saying is just know that it's not gonna be the occasional bike anymore. They're available, readily available.
so people are gonna start hounding you more and more. We ride again.
They're gonna be out here, and
Oh, they'll just will be, sure.
Jackie, is e-bike, I don't know nothing about e-bikes. I don't know nothing about bikes other than the 10-speed I had when I was a kid. The bikes that get ridden on the trails, as opposed to just the old 131 paved trail, are those types of bikes commonly available as e-bikes as well? Fat tire bikes or whatever, those are e-bikes as well?
I mean, obviously the cost, the price range is quite vast.
Yep.
But they are available.
Well, the ones.
I mean, to me, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just the ones that we saw at Walmart was a regular mountain bike, you know, the mountain bike. And it had a battery on it, and, you know, I'm sure it's one of the cheaper ones. It was at Walmart, but it's something that, you know, and there's all different kinds. There's kinds where you can just crank on the thing and it automatically pushes you through with a motor, and you don't have to pedal. And there's other ones that just assist you with the pedaling. There's a motor inside there, but it doesn't do anything unless you're pedaling.
Mhm.
So there's different classes of those, and, you know, we've seen an increase of them being used out here, especially last year. And it just seems like more and more every year. I have allowed some on disabled permits for elderly people, you know, that have problems with their knees or whatever. I've issued permits for them to use the e-bikes out here, such as you know, just like we would with an ATV or something else. So.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I just see a raft of potential problems with e-bikes at KBR. And I also see how in the heck are we going to enforce it?
Mm-hmm.
So I see both sides of that, but if we're up to me, there would never be any e-bikes at KBR, but it's not up to me, so.
Yeah, I'm not outside of that camp. I'm just, I guess I was just wanting to bring awareness of their availability. They're no longer, you know, $3,500 for the cheapest one. They're accessible, very accessible. So. That's all.
Yeah. I guess, the only last thing I'll say about it is that from my perspective, the place that we should spend most of our energy right now will be thinking about how we can enforce not having them here, rather than thinking about crafting a policy that would allow some of certain power or whatever, or certain locations. But the first amount of energy I would put into the whole thing is what's the easiest way to enforce not having them here?
Yeah.
And if we conclude that that's not possible, then we go to the step of, okay, we can't enforce they're not going to be here, but we're now going to enforce certain behaviors or certain locations or whatever, certain weather situations. I mean, I don't know, but times of day, I don't know, darkness, I don't know, but it just feels like it's crazy.
Those are all good points. And aside from board minutes, right now, and where it says no motorized vehicles, which obviously that argument is across the board, are they motorized vehicles or not? That's part of the argument. And right now, I can't honestly say we have anything written anywhere that says no e-bikes are allowed. So I can see where people are failing at complying because they aren't, unless they say, oh yeah, this is a motorized vehicle.
Well, I mean, by definition, it is a motorized vehicle, right?
It is, and I agree with that.
But
So,
like some people say, if you can't put gas in it, it's not a motor.
yeah, so I think we have to be, if we're expecting people to comply, which I'm complete agreement that they don't need to be allowed, then we need to invest in signage or the website or whatever.
I have to assume the old 131 is probably where they use it 99.9% of the time. Or maybe not, because I suppose if it's power assist when they're up, actually might use more on the other trails because they're harder to ride.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you go to Blue Dog, you can probably get an e-bike that's like a little moped. You just drive right out there.
So
It would be by far the simplest just to ban them all together. Because we could spend 2 months talking about a policy on e-bikes. I mean, forever.
There was an argument about e-bikes that, we say they're motorized vehicles, but the DOT does not recognize them as a motorized vehicle. They are a bike. So
So the no motorized vehicle sign ain't cut. It
right,
needs to be a no e-bikes.
right,
well, I really think that in order for us to enforce it too, it needs to be an administrative rule
Yeah.
that says we're not allowing e-bikes. Because right now, all I got is, hey, the board said we're not allowing
Yeah.
e-bikes. So you can't use that out here.
Maybe
But
we
I
should just,
can't write them a ticket for it.
since most people are sick of talking about it, maybe we should just present to the board as, we want to make it official on the website and with signage and what'd you call it,
Administrative rule.
administrative rule that e-bikes are not allowed on the reserve and cut and dry, done. That would, hopefully, the discussion on that would only be a little while, and that's it.
yeah, and I don't want to, I'm sorry to keep bringing it up.
Because a
but-
policy of e-bikes that are allowed would be almost impossible to read, especially with a zillion different opinions. There's just no way. It would never get done.
I agree.
It's, to me, it would just be, if we bring it back up to the board, I would suggest that we just say, no e-bikes, no. We just have to make it official so that Jason can enforce it, because right now, he can't.
So making it an administrative rule requires the state legislature to pass that as an administrative rule.
So we can't just say that,
No.
and then we have to say, here we go,
Yeah.
get involved with the state again.
So the legislature has to be introduced by somebody as a, a rule.
So we can't just go down there and put a sign on the bike trail saying no e-bikes.
We
Well,
can,
you could,
we
but
can.
I can't write.
But you can't write a ticket for that. Oh, I see.
There's no real enforcement other than, hey, you can't.
So I think I'm going to suggest that's the path we should go down. We should start down the path of writing an administrative rule and see where it falls. See if we get pushed back and.
And until then, signage that says no e-bikes allowed.
Assuming it's going to take a long time to get the administrative rule passed, yes, that'd be my recommendation is we add that to the signage.
Yes, it will take a long time. Okay.
And I would say, we don't even need to say no e-bikes. We can say, no motorized vehicles, including electrically powered vehicles of any type. Right? Because next it'll be something else that'll be electrically powered that isn't a bike. It'll be an electrically powered hiking boot,
It'd be a
Travis will be out there with his electrically powered hiking boots, hiking through the wilderness.
skateboard or scooter, or
There'll be
Something.
some guy had what do you call it, unicycle. It was a one-wheel thing that you rode around.
And I'm not against e-bikes at all, even on here. It's just, I don't know how on God's earth we would ever write a policy to regulate what kind of e-bike comes on here. And they change by the month, I'm sure, the way technology goes. That's the only reason I say no e-bikes. I'm not saying because I don't like e-bikes. Would be fine, but I don't know how we would ever make a policy and enforce said policy on an e-bike that only goes X amount of miles an hour or has X amount of power, or how do you ever do it? That's the only reason I would just say cut and dry, no e-bikes. It's just be simple.
Electrically, Scott, I'm gonna clarify, signage that says no motorized vehicles, including electrically powered, did you say vehicles or units?
I said vehicles of any, we could just say no motorized or electrically powered vehicles of any type. And if we want to say including e-bikes, just to make it crystal clear to the e-bike users that don't think their bike is electrically powered, we could add that in there.
Oh, well, it's not a vehicle, it's a bike.
Yeah, exactly, right? This means you.
I agree.
So yeah, it's either gotta be this or nothing at all. Then they just do whatever they want.
Okay. Sorry to throw salt in the wound. But it's happening. That's something that we're gonna deal with, and that we're kind of up against a wall on how do we stop it, so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you brought it up.
Anything else?
No,
When's the next meeting? Okay, so the next meeting is April 12th.
April 12th, 5:30.
5:30.
Okay.
And then we'll have to have the decision on the Neoindex to give to the board.
Yes,
So that'll be that.
we're gonna find out answers to those questions and have our final discussion and hopefully a final recommendation at that meeting.
Yeah, I hope Jody can get some information from his perspective, from his seed supplier that, like you said, Jackie, we could also get information from the guy who made the presentation before. I've forgotten his name right now, but I'd kind of like, to get some investment from the guys that are leasing in this discussion.
yeah,
So,
Yeah, I'll reach out to that, is Russell Groves is the entomologist, so I'll reach out to him and say, here's a bunch of questions, are any of these, is one better than another one? Are there different half-lives or are they all names,
yeah,
he'll know that.
okay. All right,
Thanks, everybody.
thank you. Oh, hey, Travis, not for anybody else. I already told Jason this, but for you, Travis, I got an answer today from the thermostat manufacturer about the wiring for that unit out there. There was one jumper that's missing on the thermostat.
So you
So
sent
I sent him my